Hello everybody, it is Fight Club Hubs. Welcome to another wonderful episode of GVN Live. With me is Jan and Mark B. Writing, and it's going to be kind of one of those shows. It was a very slow news week for the past week and a half or so, and we're just going to comment on what it is we found interesting for the past few days. But to start things off, let's do something a little bit differently here. So, how are you guys doing, and what do you guys have planned coming up? I know we normally do this at the end of the show, but I figure we mention it at the beginning, and then we mention it again at the end of the show to remind people. So, Jan, how are you? What you got going on?
I'm okay. Work's been a little rough, but what are you gonna do? I am currently, gosh, I don't know. Pretty much everything is just leading up to the release of Soul Calibur 6. That's basically what I'm waiting for at this point. I got 9 days. Yeah, I'm not counting them. No.
Did you take part in the beta?
I did. It was fantastic. There was some issues with Saturday's connectivity, but it cleared up pretty close to the end of the evening, and then most of Sunday was real clean. I've got a new stick coming. I'm waiting for the game to release. I've already got the deluxe edition pre-ordered. Yes, I'm a view whoring shill, and I don't really care. Honestly, at this point, I've pretty much just been sort of variety streaming until it comes out, because once it hits, that's I'm going hard on that, and there's no stopping. A large amount of my time will be spent playing Soul Calibur 6, simply just because it is just that good of a game for me thus far.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of other side projects that I'm working on in Final Fantasy XIV and Monster Hunter, but outside of that, it's just, normal stuff is normal stuff. They just did the Autumn Festival for PC that they had it on PS4 and Xbox first, but they released it on PC.
Yeah, I was taking part in that.
Yeah, one of the things that they actually unlocked was the ability to get the Wyvern Ignition Impact Greatsword. So I'm just might as well get it because it's the best sword in the game right now. So
looks like a giant rocket.
It is a rocket sword. That's exactly what it is. And so yeah, at this point, I'm starting to work on. I've got my full tank set, so at this point, I'm just waiting for Lunastra to release. I know that next week they're doing Arc Tempered
Zora Magdaros.
Thank you. So yeah, Arc Tempered Zora on PS4 and Xbox. So that'll be okay. I really wish they would release a new monster instead of Arc Tempering all of the existing monsters, because at this point it's you're kind of low on,
Yeah, give us Monster Hunter World Ultimate Edition already. Give us 20 new monsters.
My theory is it just takes them a while to import monsters into the game, so the Arc Tempering is a week's worth of work. Building a new monster probably takes a month
cheap way
or
to make
so.
deviants.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's me. I'm just looking forward to seeing what comes out in the next couple of months too, just because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out towards the end of this year and into 2019. That's just, I can't wait. There's Soul Calibur and Devil May Cry are coming out. What year is this?
Yeah. This must feel like a great year to somebody who committed a date rape in college.
Oh.
On that note, so what's happening, Mark?
Nothing. I was on vacation for the past 2 weeks. A friend of mine came out to visit, so we just did nothing, and it was great. I went from not playing any video games to bouncing my time back and forth between 5 fucking video games, which, Jesus Christ. I have been playing Fist of the North Star, Lost Paradise, Spider-Man, Labyrinth of Refrain, Covenant of Dusk, Metal Max Xeno, and Fuck, you can't even remember all of them. God damn it.
Uh,
Trying to remember. But yeah, so Valkyria Chronicles 4.
there you go.
And I've been just like, dabbling in all of them. I beat the unmerciful shit out of Metal Max Xeno. I don't even know why. It's fine. I would not recommend it to anybody just because it requires a very specific kind of player, and I don't think most people are that specific kind of player. But for whatever reason, it like amused me enough that I wanted to absolutely destroy it and like max out my characters level wise. So I did, and I did. And then it has a new game plus where it's just like turn off the story and let me just blow up monsters and collect more powerful gear. I'm like, all right, I want to do that. But yeah, I mean, like the other games that I've been playing are all, well, Labyrinth of Refrain is a booby dungeon crawler. So whether or not you like that lives or dies on whether or not you like Demon Gaze. Also,
Fair.
the developers of it developed the fuck is it? The Witch and the Hundred Knight.
Okay.
So if you thought that game was weird and convoluted, this game is going to be weird and convoluted too.
I saw a little bit of gameplay footage, and it looked like just your ordinary, anime dungeon crawler, but are there, like, aspects of the gameplay that differ from, like, your standard? Like,
yeah, the characters that you make aren't actually characters. They're puppets that you infuse a soul into. And, like, their parts can break, which is the worst mechanic I have ever seen. It is just the worst. You can get, like, critted by a monster the moment you walk into the dungeon. Like, it doesn't happen often, but it's random chance. You can get a gore crit, lose your fucking arm, and then just have to, like, traipse back to town and spend, like, $700 to replace that arm.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying, and I hate it. It's, it doesn't happen often enough that it's a game breaker, fortunately, and I like this genre. Like, that's the only bad mechanic that they've incorporated. Everything else is fine. But it's just like, I don't think I'm going to complete it just because it doesn't have the kind of charm and personality of something like Strange Journey or a SMT dungeon crawler in general. And it does not have the ease of play that I've come to expect from the sorts of games that are made by, I can't remember the name of the company, but the same company that made the Demon Gaze games and Stranger of Sword City. So you're kind of in this awkward position where it doesn't have all of the quality of life enhancements that you would expect from those games, and it doesn't have the personality of an Atlas dungeon crawler, so it's just kind of like there. The other three games are basically awesome, and they're all going to be on my short list for the top 10 games of this year.
That's
Valkyria Chronicles 4 is Valkyria Chronicles. If you like Valkyria Chronicles, you will think that this game is great. If you don't like Valkyria Chronicles, it does nothing to convince you that the game is, good. But if you don't like Valkyria Chronicles, you're probably a heathen, and I don't know why we would be friends. So,
bye, Mark.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never played it, so
it's a sort of mix between turn-based and real-time strategy combat. If you like turn-based strategy games, you might be worthwhile seeing if there's a demo available, or probably picking up the original, as I think it's probably pretty cheap by now. And it's on PS4 and PC, so,
Okay.
But Spider-Man is awesome. Just awesome. And Fist of the North Star is fucking Fist of the North Star set in the engine of Yakuza. And listen.
You were already drunk.
I was like, listen, I was already there. Yeah. Mix.
It's hilarious. I don't even understand why it is as funny as it is, and yet it's still Fist of the North Star, so it's like, okay.
Yeah, they're like, hey, Ken, do all of this stuff that exists in the world of Yakuza. And he's like, what? Okay. Yeah. They're like, hey, you have to run a bar. Hey, you have to run showgirls. Hey, you have to do DDR-style minigames to punch dudes to death in a hospital that also doubles as a dance rave.
Okay. That sounds like a great game already.
It's great. The only downside of it is the same downsides I have with every Yakuza style game. I'm sick and fucking tired of beating dudes to death because they're too stupid to know that I'm not going to kill them. And it's worse than in Fist of the North Star than it is in Yakuza, because in Yakuza, like, dude isn't like super famous. So unless you are deeply dialed into the intricacies of the sort of stuff that happens in mafia type things, you wouldn't know him. Ken is like basically already the savior of the town, like 20 minutes into arriving, kind of.
Mhm.
And everybody knows that, like, if he touches you, you're going to explode. But like, these dudes still run up on him like, "What are you gonna do to me? I'm gonna turn you into pudding."
I'm going to kill you.
Nani?
Yeah. It's like,
Omae wa mo shinderu.
yeah. It's like, at the end of the game, you're already dead.
Please tell
I
me
like
he doesn't
the,
say
I like
it
the
like
English
that.
voice acting. I like the English voice acting. The English voice acting is fine. The English version is like that. Like, he kind of sort of has, like, it's not like Batman voice, but he has like the deep voice Christian Bale actually should have.
Right?
Yeah.
I like how you said that. Should have.
Should
Yeah,
have.
like, Christian Bale should have had a deep voice. Instead, because he doesn't, it sounded like he was fucking, talking from his diaphragm. Yeah.
Sounded
Really
constipated.
seals in the flavor, But yeah, so it's
Swear
great.
to me.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. And Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man game
Spider-Man.
I've ever played, I think.
Better than Spider-Man versus the Kingpin?
That was never my top one, actually. It's on my top 10. It's on my top 5 list, but it's never my top one. So yes, I would say probably
Better than
so.
Spider-Man the arcade game?
Also, can be on my list potentially, but isn't always. Yes, better than the arcade game.
Mhm.
Okay.
My list would generally go up until this came out. Spider-Man Web of Shadows, Spider-Man 2.
Second there, I
versus
thought you
the
said Web of
Kingpin.
Fire. I'm like, wait a second. You
No,
played the
not 32X.
32X piece of shit?
I did, and it's not. Spider-Man versus the Kingpin for the Sega CD specifically, but the Genesis one is also fine. Then, crap, I don't remember what my other two are off the top of my head. It generally vacillates between like the arcade Spider-Man, the one that you could like do that was like a beat 'em up on the Xbox 360, and then there was like one other I can't remember right now. I would say this Spider-Man is definitely pretty close to the top right now. So if you like Spider-Man, it's an awesome game. And if you don't like Spider-Man, given how the character has been handled in the comics the past couple of decades, I don't blame you, but give this game a shot anyway. As far as stuff I'm working on a video, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now.
Yay!
A new Mark video? That's craziness.
Uh-oh, must be Persona or SMT related.
Nope.
Oh!
Nope, it is not. That's why I'm not talking about it.
Ooh.
Because it's going to
The
be a
suspense
surprise.
is killing me. Alright, what have I been up to lately? Well, I bought Tomb Raider, haven't played it yet. I bought Mega Man, it's kicking my ass. I'm still playing Monster Hunter World on PC and PS4.
I installed Tomb Raider and I still haven't played that.
That's how much we give a damn about this new lore. After the first two games, we were just like, okay, you know what?
You know what's really great to me about that is when the first Lara Croft reboot came out, we were like the two people. I think there was like maybe like a small contingent, but we were the two people who were publicly saying, I would rather have the regular Tomb Raider back. It's fine if you like this Tomb Raider, but they could have just made her boobs smaller and put her in pants, and it would have been better. And to now, I'm actually seeing several articles have come out where people have said straight out, yeah, we should have just stuck with the original Tomb Raider. This character is unquestionably worse.
She has absolutely not evolved as a character in 3 fucking games.
No, it's worse. She has evolved in this game. She's basically a blood psychopath and an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So
this game.
she continues being a psychopath like the minute she was in the first game, where, oh no, I was almost raped, so I killed a guy, I cried about it for 20 minutes, and then I went on a killing spree.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm fine with that being your character arc, but your character needs to stop being a blood psychopath eventually, because it's like she doesn't have any other personality traits associated with her. Like, I'll play it, sort of, but I didn't buy it, and I'm not, like, I just rented it from Gamefly, and I'm just gonna get as far into it as I feel compelled to do, and then just not come back to it ever again.
If I wanted to play Murder Simulator, I'd go play Yandere Simulator.
Okay.
But that guy's kind of a weird asshole.
But, yeah,
I mean,
so...
Yeah, but, you know... You get the idea.
No, I get exactly where you're coming from.
But, actually, I got a question for you, Mark, because you were talking about, that dungeon crawling RPG. That name suddenly just escaped my mind for some damn reason.
Labyrinth of Refrain, yes.
Labyrinth of Refrain. Which do you prefer, that game, or do you like The Lost Child more? Two games that have released.
That's a good question. I have not completed The Lost Child yet.
It is a very long game, though.
Yeah,
and it does start to drag at some points.
The Lost Child has the sort of quality of life improvements in it that I'm talking about, where you can like click on the map and just go there.
Oh yeah, auto scrolling.
Nice. Yeah, which is nice. And I like the characterization in that game better. I like the story that they're trying to tell better, as weird as it is.
It is.
But I do think that there are some interesting qualities to this, too. Right now, I would say The Lost Child would be a close win, but I'll have to think about it a little more as I play it.
Okay. But yeah, so I've picked up games. I haven't been playing games because, again, Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter GU are just fucking crack. Mega Man 11 is the only game I've really been trying to play. Oh, Dragon Quest 11. I actually haven't played that in about a week, but that's a great game too. People like to seriously talk down about that game a lot, saying, oh, it's extremely simplistic. It's a throwback to an old era of RPGs. I'm like, well, it's always been like that. That franchise has been like that the whole time.
Yeah,
but
that
it
was
doesn't.
the
It also,
Joel and I had.
Yeah, but it does one thing that other RPGs don't do, and it doesn't hold your hand. It makes you figure shit out, where to go and all that stuff, which is a mechanic that's pretty much, like, gone in most RPGs now. It's like all these RPGs are usually telling you what direction you need to be going to next, and it's usually either your choice to hold off on doing that by going to some side quests or whatnot, or the game forces you to continue down your story. So...
Yeah. Oh, Janice.
Hmm.
They are doing the Red Army event in the English Azure Lane.
Yeah, I noticed that. They're also doing the event where you can do where you can get the repair ship girl, whose name escapes me off the top of my head.
Akagi, yes.
Yes, yeah, Akagi. So Akagi is available for
Akashi, excuse me.
All right.
Is it Akashi? But anyway.
So that's enough about what we do. We're in the planning phases, of course, for a new segment that will probably debut sometime in November. We'll talk about it maybe next episode of GVN Live, but it might be an interesting, exciting one. We'll see how it plays out. We got to do a lot of planning for it. For today's show, we're just really gonna just talk about the news. Some news articles that have popped up in the last couple of days because, again, like I just said, the last 2 weeks of gaming news has been incredibly slow. So I figured I'll start off by selecting the first one, and because I was just talking about Dragon Quest XI, why don't I just mention this one? So the producers of Dragon Quest XI are now talking about the possibility of bringing over Dragon Quest X westward, and even creating an offline version of the game, which doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, this is a game that came out on the Wii, then the PC, then the Wii U. This game has been out longer than Phantasy Star Online 2. Even though Dragon Quest XI is so far a moderate success in the United States, I see absolutely no reason to bring 10 over anymore. If anything, at least the PC version, I suppose. But I see absolutely no reason as to why they should even consider this now at this point. It's a 6-7-year-old game from 2 generations ago. And as much as I was excited about the idea of an online Dragon Quest game, there's no excitement, no interest for me whatsoever. And what are your thoughts on it, Jan? Jan?
Dragon Quest is not a series that I've been fairly ingrained in. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about what Dragon Quest is in a general sense of it. But what I do know is that the idea of RPG franchises getting an online iteration, such as Phantasy Star, Monster Hunter, Dragon's Dogma,
Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy, a lot of these games didn't hit mainstream as well as, say, for instance, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy XI was a relatively moderate success in terms of MMOs. Final Fantasy XIV has absolutely shattered everyone's expectations as basically the biggest MMO on the market right now. And a lot of people just look at some of these other franchises and are like, that would be cool if we had an MMO version of that. But then we look at stuff like, I don't know, Dragon Ball Xenoverse, and that was a terrible idea. A lot of these companies that run these games, especially, like, I'm looking at you, Capcom. Like, you guys have done really good with Monster Hunter World. Please don't screw that up. Thanks for having a dedicated team specifically for that game, because it's turned out to be a really big success here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we never got Frontier in the States really sucks. But it's just as old and just as antiquated as, DQ10, and is just as antiquated and just as old as Phantasy Star Online and, PSO2. The general thought process is you can take a general standard JRPG franchise and maneuver it over into the MMO world as a good idea tends not to be the best idea because it generally doesn't work. Final Fantasy XIV didn't work in its original iteration. It was absolute ass. And look at it where it is now, 5 years later. It's the biggest MMO on the market, So you gotta figure out where that middle ground is. And a lot of these other companies don't know it. To put somebody like Square Enix at the helm of another MMO, of another franchise, would be weird. Capcom doesn't really know how to do it. Sega sure as hell doesn't know how to do it right. I mean, as it is right now, PSO2, while fun, and I have a lot of fun in that game, is basically a dress-up simulator at this point.
Yes. I mean, if I can dress myself up as a fucking Vocaloid, I mean, you kind of shifted your priorities of what this game was originally meant to be.
Exactly. I mean, PSO2 is all about a cash out. It's all about the AC Scratch and what random collaboration they're going to do and what sort of fun mini dungeon that you're going to get halfway through the collab specifically just for the nostalgia of it. I mean, they did a Final Fantasy XIV crossover in PSO2 a while back too, where they actually took the Odin fight from A Realm Reborn and put it into PSO. And while that worked in the general sense, they tried to continue to use the Final Fantasy style of fight with the PSO2 combat. And while I'm not saying that collabing an MMO with an action game is a good or bad idea, it tends to translate awkwardly, especially when you're going from action into MMO versus MMO into action. So that sort of leads me to the whole idea of what they did with the Monster Hunter World and Final Fantasy XIV crossover. When they did, Behemoth in Monster Hunter World was done fantastically. Okay, it's probably one of the better fights in the game right now. Moving Rathalos over to 14, while good on paper, tends to be more frustrating because people are still trying to play it like they're playing 14, not Monster Hunter in 14. Because there are specific locations and specific mechanics that are easily dodgeable, but people just don't because they don't understand the way the Rathalos actually actuates in the game proper. So you end up on a 20-minute run and no kill because everyone got frustrated because they don't understand the fight, or they're not willing to try to put in the extra couple of seconds to actually listen to the one or two people who have actually done the fight in the Monster Hunter world to understand, hey, this is how you have to fight this monster. If you're any kind of DPS, you stand here. If you are not, you stand here, and you rotate as the monster rotates. And
Okay.
the problem is people just don't.
Collaboration aside, though, why should Enix even bother? Square Enix even bother considering going back to the main point about
I think
Square Enix and Dragon Quest X.
So while I digress on that point, the basic idea is that even if it's a collaboration or if it's a fully fledged MMO, it would be really difficult for somebody like that, especially even if it's Square Enix. It doesn't matter who it is. It's tough to diversify multiple MMOs in a market that's already saturated by that company. That's why Blizzard didn't do it. That's why Square hasn't really done it. And it's generally why most MMOs don't hit the ground running very well, because they're expecting their game to be the next big thing. The problem is they don't have that marketing clout. They don't have that presence that the game itself can bring. And while Dragon Quest is a big franchise, it is not nearly as big as, say, something like Final Fantasy.
Yep, Final Fantasy has a bigger worldwide appeal, whereas Dragon Warrior is the more famous of the two in Japan.
It's anime. Therefore,
Akira Toriyama, yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is. It's anime. And to most people, they would rather play the game that's more rooted in reality, a la Final Fantasy, because it's more relatable, because that's how they branded it, versus the anime MMO that not a lot of people are really interested in. Because if you think anime MMO, you generally think of what? MapleStory and L-Sword. So, yeah, that doesn't work out that well. It's the same reason why PSO2's probably never coming to the United States. It's the same reason why, a lot of these other MMOs on the market that are more not anime-like, but are more anime-centric, I guess is the word I'm looking for, like BDO and Terra. They have this comical structure to them where the world and the characters are presented in a less realistic light and more of a... And I don't use the term to mean like exactly that, but super-ish, like superhero-ish style of vibe, where they're more fantastical, they're more unbelievable, and therefore are how the game is marketed. And so that really leads to this whole idea of games like that, just while they're big in Japan, are only going to be big with those who are into it in the United States. That doesn't necessarily translate to MMO success. So something like Dragon Warrior might be good in Japan, might not do so well in the States, which would be a huge loss on Square's part specifically, because while it's a good franchise, I just don't see it doing that well as an MMO in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Mark, same question to you, and on top of that, would you give it a try if it actually ever saw the light of day?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was distracted. I have this stone here that I've been trying to wring a whole lot of blood out of, so I wasn't able to pay attention to what we were talking about. My apologies. But in all seriousness, to answer the question, I generally don't think anything of it, and no, I wouldn't.
All right, so there we go.
But yeah, it's like,
look,
Dragon Quest is not a popular brand name in the U.S. It just isn't.
No.
It has never been a popular brand name in the U.S. It's the first, or one of the first JRPGs to come out, sure. Mm-hmm. But, just because everybody got a free copy of it with Nintendo Power, it didn't turn into a lifelong success for the franchise. It does okay in the U.S. But Square Enix is bound and determined to market everything that they make at this point. Like, basically, the nearest that I can come to is during the NES era and the SNES era, Nintendo would constantly tell them no, 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 like some overprotective adult. And then they started bringing games to the PlayStation, and Sony would tell them no, no, no. And then finally, when everybody stopped telling them no, like some sort of precocious teenager, they were like, we're going to release everything! Fuck them! Those adults don't understand! And they've just never stopped. They have just never stopped. And there needs to be a point where somebody intervenes and tells them, we don't need to release every game that comes out. But by the alternative comparison, it's also, you know, they are kind of sort of perpetually broke because of that stupid fucking movie that they made and how it like almost tanked their business. So they're constantly acting like a poor person. They're constantly acting like they're poor, and every time they get any kind of money, they're just develop everything, and they just try to like throw it to the next project, to the next project, to the next project, to the next project, without like stopping to try and curate a little better. So,
you talking about Square or Telltale?
Yes.
Oh.
But like they're basically going to do the bare minimum that they can to make this a functional offline game, get it into the US, and make whatever money they can for it so that they can funnel it into the 7 remake or, you know, 16, which is almost certainly in development right now, or, you know, whatever project, or Kingdom Hearts 3. Because that may not actually come out before this thing does, the way that they go.
Yeah, even though they haven't released date yet, nothing is set in stone.
Okay.
So
it's, for me, it's, I generally am not thinking about that property because I'm kind of looking at it from the same perspective that I look at, you know, a lot of their stuff where I've seen it and I wasn't interested at the time. I haven't played a Dragon Quest game since like 7, I want to say, which
7 was a very slow game to start off.
Yes, I did not enjoy that game at all.
I mean,
And I just haven't been back. I haven't been interested in coming back to it. So for me, it's like I'm not invested in the idea of them releasing 10. And if they did, I probably wouldn't play it just because, you know, it's just not for me. I don't think the franchise in a whole, like in summation, has just kind of passed me by.
All right. Well, that's about that for that conversation. My piece is that, you know what, it's too little too late. I'm not interested in Dragon Quest X. Moving on. So another interesting thing is Microsoft made the news at least 3 times.
At least.
One of the bigger announcements for them, it's also a critical one, is that Microsoft has to halt distribution of a huge error or huge bug that was found with their latest update, which would accidentally start deleting stuff in your profile.
Or so it was actually deleting stuff out of your actual like your personal files. So like if you actually go into like your user folder in Windows, it was deleting stuff, like just completely removing it, and there was no restoring it because, as we all know, whenever they do a major seasonal update like the creator update, you can't restore back. There's no rolling back once that specific when it goes in and it's stuck, that's it. You can't roll back. People were like all over the forums, all over Microsoft, like, yo, absolutely not. You cannot release this on the 15th. You can't do it. It will ruin everybody, including yourselves. This is a terrible bug. Fix it. And Microsoft looked over it and went, you know what? You're actually right. That is a terrible idea. Let's not do that. And they halted the release date on the October update. So at this point, I don't know that we have an update for when it's actually going to release. They're still calling it the October update, but I'm pretty sure we're not going to see it until at least mid-November at this point to get that bug fixed.
The funny thing about this bug is it reminds me of a bug. It's this very, very similar bug that popped up when Shivering Isles expansion came out for Oblivion. And that bug was it was kind of a countdown bug, and it would permanently delete one item in the game world from the game's data, starting with like inanimate objects and then eventually moving its way to NPCs and armor and all that other stuff. I mean, it was caught and eventually fixed by the users first, like by modders and all that stuff, and then eventually, Bethesda fixed it themselves. But it's just that bug right there from Microsoft Windows 10 just sounds absolutely eerily similar to the one we just had at Shivering Isles. Microsoft really, I mean, for me, I have had absolutely no personal issues whatsoever with Windows 10 up to this point. Thankfully, I didn't get this patch yet. Unlike some of the other people, probably like early beta testers or something like that have encountered all that fun stuff. This would have probably been the first major blemish against Microsoft for Windows 10. I mean, people complain about the forced auto updates and all that stuff, and it means like you can schedule them to happen when you're sleeping. I mean, what the hell are you doing in the middle of the night other than watching porn or something like that? Mm-hmm. But
watching porn.
Watching porn.
It's very important you watch porn in the middle of the night. I guess.
Listen, my erection knows no time zones.
Oh, God, Mark. Okay.
Thank
no
you,
man
Mark.
is an island, but there are moments where I am a peninsula.
Oh, boy.
I guess if you're grabbing your pillow, you're technically a cul-de-sac.
Boo. No, I don't like the sack.
Though I think it's interesting to note that Microsoft wasn't just in the news for a Windows breaking bug. The big rumor, and I think this one's actually a little bit kind of back on topic as far as gaming is concerned, is that as of right now, there is a 90% complete purchase by Microsoft of Obsidian.
Microsoft is apparently on their way to owning as many studios as possible to have dedicated, studios developing games for Microsoft. Something they talked about back at this past E3. They have, 5 development studios, in-house development studios? 7 now? This would make it 8. And to be truthfully honest, at this point, even if you get Obsidian, they're still not producing that, title that's going to entice people to buy, the Xbox brand. I mean, Sony's got fucking the Spider-Man game. People are raving about that. We got Last of Us 2 coming out, and people are waiting for that. You got Ghost of Tsushima and all that other shit coming out that Microsoft, doesn't have.
You got Sekiro.
Yeah. But, I mean, what does that mean, though, if they own Obsidian? They'll have a company who's pretty much most well-known for making sloppy sequels to well-known games like Fallout Vegas or KOTOR 2.
Okay, so while KOTOR 2 may have been sloppy, Fallout New Vegas was
the buggiest fucking game I've ever played in the Fallout franchise.
Yeah, that's a very strange conversation.
Version of Fallout to actually hit the Fallout franchise by the modding community.
Yeah, that's a very strange conversation actually, because there was a period 3 or 4 years ago where Obsidian was that company, and the thing is that now, like, that comment in mixed company will get you smacked in the mouth.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
No, you're not wrong. That's why it's funny. Because it's like Fallout New Vegas started off as just probably the worst coded anything I've ever seen. So when that game first came out, there was a game-breaking bug that and this is in the first 5-10
Are we talking about the hat bug?
No, I'm talking about not being able to even get into New Vegas. You would hit the zone line, open the door, and it would crash and erase your game. You'd have to start all the way beginning again, which, by the way, is a completely unskippable cutscene unless you mod it.
There was also a bug where if you did a certain thing, like you took on a certain quest, you wouldn't be able to enter the New Vegas Strip ever again unless you were wearing this one specific hat.
Yeah, yeah.
That
It's
was
all
very
dumb.
weird. Yeah, but like
yeah,
once they
it's
patched out like those issues, most people have come to regard New Vegas as the best modern Fallout ever. And there are a lot of people who actively think it's one of the like it's the best game that Bethesda has published in some time. Like these are people who have a dim opinion of Bethesda as a publisher in general, you understand. But like, it's generally regarded as by a lot of people as the best modern Fallout. And they also made South Park: The Stick of Truth, which was whatever it was. Basically, it was as good as it was going to be for a South Park game. And
At
then
least
they
it wasn't
made,
South Park 64. Let's just leave it at that.
well, yes,
look. Not even the Dreamcast hardware could save that game.
I don't even know what could have saved that game at this point, frankly. But
not chocolate salty balls.
No, they have thetans in them.
God damn
Fuck
it.
you, that was funny.
But I mean, and then they go on to make what, Fractured But Whole, and I'm like,
No, they didn't.
Really?
They didn't. Well, they didn't develop the Fractured But Whole. That was one of the internal Ubisoft teams.
Oh, gotcha.
The next game that Obsidian developed was Pillars of Eternity, which was
Crowdfunded.
Yeah.
universally critically acclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
Like just universally critically acclaimed, and
it feels like a game they should have been making because the majority of that company, Obsidian, is made up of former Black Isle Studio people, and this is the game people who made, the Baldur's Gate and the Icewind Dale games. So I'm not surprised that Pillars of Eternity was awesome.
Yeah, they also released Pillars of Eternity 2, which was again awesome. So it's, in theory, I sort of look at it and I say, okay, this company has released arguably the best Fallout game in the modern era. They have released, once it was patched and fixed up, arguably the best KOTOR game of the franchise. Like they are much better at telling a story than Bethesda and BioWare, according to a not small amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're one of the best storytelling companies in the world at this point. They, even Alpha Protocol, which was mechanically unfriendly, was interesting to a certain extent. Public opinion on them has drastically shifted, and they're considered to be one of the better developers on the marketplace at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense, sort of, for Microsoft to try and get their hands on that developer to like shore up their release lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you have to
I still think it's fucking stupid, but
But I mean, like, the public opinion of Obsidian has gone up only in recent years. I mean,
Sure.
Fallout New Vegas came out almost 10 years ago. And
But
between that stretch of time,
video gaming is a fickle bitch mistress, dude. What do you want?
Yeah, dude.
I mean,
I
but,
look at it.
BioWare used to be one of the highest ranked companies amongst people in the marketplace, and in like the past couple of years, everybody's like, "Boo, BioWare, boo!"
yeah, pretty much.
Burn the witch. Like it's that's all it takes. All it takes is for people to stop caring about you for a couple of years for your stock to tank. Look at BioWare, look at Bungie. You go and you look these people up now, and nobody gives a fuck about them.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I mean, and a lot of it could also be attributed to, like, if you think about sort of like what happened with that, like you were saying, like look at Bungie versus look at Obsidian. The same thing could be said to be like, look at Iron Galaxy and Double Helix. These guys had nothing on their radar for anything but like remakes. They completely revamped Killer Instinct, and now everyone's like, ooh, we got to get these guys on board, and so then, and the only reason that
I still contend that they're both absolutely terrible fucking companies, though.
I mean, yeah, I get
I'm in
it.
the minority. I know I'm in the. Everything they touched but Killer Instinct was bad.
Basically. But I also look at it this way, because it's like, the only reason Double Helix didn't even finish Killer Instinct was because Amazon bought them, and they had to remove themselves from the project. And then they bring in Iron Galaxy, and Iron Galaxy finishes it out, and arguably Season 3 was far degraded from what the first two seasons were. So it's like, you get one company, it goes up, and then all of a sudden their stock is bright and their future seems amazing. And then you bring in another studio who has been doing relatively well with other franchises, comes in to finish up season 3, and now Killer Instinct's a dead fighting game. So what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of how it goes. And the worst part about it is that there's no possibility, or there is no sight of a sequel KI game coming out, because let's be honest, Microsoft has their eyes set on other targets, and it's not the fighting game market.
No,
So-
but I wouldn't put it past Microsoft, because Killer Instinct did do moderately well for them, to be truthfully honest, even if to us in the FGC consider it like an okay, above okay level fighting game at this point. Even
It
with
sold Xboxes. That's not just okay. It sold consoles.
No. Okay in terms of like just the game it turned out to be. It
sold
sold fine.
consoles. It matters.
That's what I'm trying to say though.
It was on the Evo main stage for 2 years.
Yeah, it made money for
yeah.
Microsoft. That's what I'm trying to say. But even if they're not pursuing the fighting game, genre, I mean, there's still a possibility that we're going to get a KI2 probably in a few years, but not not anytime soon, obviously.
The thing about that though is like by the time we actually see a second KI, the thought process is going to be, well, that's too little, too late. They should have capitalized. They should. So the baseline is they shouldn't have done a season 3. They should have worked on a second game. And they should have let Iron Galaxy put those extra characters that they put in Season 3 as new characters for a Season 1 of KI2. That is the general consensus. Because they could have completely revamped the engine, they could have continued to work with what they had and move forward with it, but instead they just continued to use they used the technology they currently had, and they continued with KI1, which, don't get me wrong, that was great, and I'm glad they were able to extend the life of the game for a few more months. But in the generality of it all, it's just you look at the way that Microsoft in general handles its third-party companies that are being brought in as first-party developers, and it gets to a point now where you're just like, I don't think I trust that this is going to be as good as it probably could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, We Happy Few.
Mm-hmm. Now,
it started off bad. They brought it back. They tried to revamp it and complete it, and it's still bad.
But
so I don't know.
But looping back to the Obsidian possible acquisition, though, like, what do we exactly expect Microsoft to get out of them? Like, are we expecting Microsoft to have their own line of like RPG games now to come out? Because that's pretty much Obsidian's like bread and butter. I mean, they could do other genres, but this is the genre that they're best at.
I don't know where that goes, frankly, because even if Microsoft acquires them, they have shown that they are not necessarily the most patient of taskmasters. Look at, the Lion's Head Studios and everything that happened with them as an example.
And Rare.
So looking at them and saying, hey, here's this company that made like all these successful games, we're going to acquire them, is like, well, that's not great. On the other hand, we do also have to note that Lion's Head Studios was run by, one of the most fickle and overpromising game developers in human history. So there was never going to be a point where they were going to necessarily pay off to the extent that was expected of them. And Rare has kind of sort of shed all of their good developers. So when they started making games, Viva Pinata was great, but everything else that they touched turned to shit, or at least to mediocrity. So It's kind of a case where, we can't look at those as definitive examples because Obsidian is still a good developer. But then you have to kind of look at it from the perspective of, well, Obsidian's a good developer for Pillars of Eternity. Every other game that they've made has been functionally broken in many respects. And there's no guarantee Microsoft is going to be the company that's going to help them get to a point where they can make a non-broken three-dimensional game. And console gamers are not going to buy a Pillars of Eternity. And we know this because games like Wasteland and Wasteland 2 didn't move heaven and earth when they came out on the consoles to the extent they did on the PC.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that guy that does the jump thing and says Peggle 2?
Yeah.
I mean, Rage 2! Like, why? Why is that a thing? Necessarily doesn't need to be. It's the same thing with this. It's like, I don't know. Like, it seems like it would be overwhelming. You'd think that this would be big news, but you look at it, it's a sideline, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know that I care. Because you're right, this is yet another RPG company getting bought up by yet another of the larger, as you said, Taskmaster companies that, honestly, I don't really think have any clue what they're doing. They're buying stuff up. It's the same reason why would Amazon buy gaming companies to make games for a non-existent platform?
Oh,
Why?
Amazon Fire. I'm just saying.
Why would Netflix want a Minecraft story mode deal with Telltale? I mean, a lot of these decisions don't make viable sense. It's because specific mediums want to cash in on the viability of specific franchises in the gaming world. Why do you think we're getting a live-action Monster Hunter movie?
Yep.
Yay!
Yeah, it's at the end of the day.
It's not Tony Jaa. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they actually do end up going through with this sale, I see Obsidian dead within 5 years, maybe 10. They're not going to make any kind of they're not going to be a big money maker with two-dimensional games, which Microsoft has to know. Like that's not going to be a thing. Like, if Microsoft is looking at it like a whole brand picture, maybe I could see that being something that matters, because a Pillars of Eternity 3, 4, 5, or whatever on Windows is almost certainly going to keep making money. Sure. Mm-hmm. If they're looking at it from a whole brand perspective, absolutely that's a great idea. But I don't think they are. I think they're looking at it from a bolster the Xbox 2 or whatever the hell they're going to call their next generation console. So I'm pretty sure that they know that they're not recovering with the Xbox One and that they are aiming for the next generation. So they want to bolster whatever that's going to be. I don't see Obsidian being the company that makes a game that makes Microsoft into, the platform to own again. And I don't see Microsoft being happy with them because they're not going to turn out what Microsoft wants from them.
Right.
Now, speaking of next gen for Microsoft, it's like they're not exactly waiting for that. With the last article I wanted to talk about with tonight, Microsoft wanting to jump into the cloud gaming arena now with something they're called CloudX. This isn't really something new. I mean, cloud gaming has been talked about nonstop in multiple fashions for the last few years, as a matter of fact. Sony has kind of a cloud. I forget what is their program called for the for their cloud PlayStation
PS Now or something like that.
PlayStation Now.
PlayStation Now, yeah.
Yeah, and you can play all kinds of games on demand through a cloud gaming service. You can even play games remotely from your PlayStation 4 onto like a cell phone or onto your computer, like up in your bedroom, through something like Remote Play. Other companies, I forget the name of the one company, but a long time ago, there was this company that was going to make that little small computer that was all based on cloud gaming, and that fizzled. That became abandonware, like that. I can't remember the name of the company. Huh?
What, Game On?
Not Game On. It wasn't the Phantom, but it was a company that tried to take what the Phantom was doing by consoleizing a PC, but using cloud gaming to play games through a service. I forget what the game company was called.
Yeah, I don't think I remember what that was.
This is like 10 years. This was something from like 10 years ago, back when the in the prime of the Xbox 360 and the PS3.
Yeah, I really wasn't paying attention to cloud gaming back then, because I think a lot of it was just
Smoke and mirrors at the time. Just a theory for most
it was
people.
all pipe dreams. And even I can honestly say that even now, technically, cloud gaming still is kind of a wash.
I mean, Microsoft has talked about, using cloud computing to help out their games in terms of, let's say, like Crackdown, whatever version is coming out, and using using cloud computing to help out with like all the calculations for like, oh, look at this building coming down. You can see every fiber of dust.
So, when you really get down into the nitty gritty of the idea of what stream cloud gaming, okay,
Yeah.
like truly efficient, well rendered, easily playable cloud gaming, even on the Azure platform, I don't see that being something that's going to be viable, even with the internet speeds of today. If we had actually gone the way of fiber optics like we were supposed to 15 years ago, then sure, maybe I could see that being a thing. But considering the fact that we have all of these NN issues, we have all of these net neutrality problems, we have issues with the FCC, we have problems with throttling, we have problems with greedy companies and ISPs and people not being able to pay attention. And I'm not going to get into an NN rant. Thank you.
By the way, real quick, the service is called OnLive. That the company I was thinking about from several years ago. But
Didn't
go
I
on.
just say that?
I don't know if I heard you properly then.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think you said Game Alive, but
Game Live. Anyway, on live. Yeah. So anyway, the idea of being able to pay a flat fee per month for access to streamed games is not new, but is really only well equipped to be done through PlayStation Now, except for the fact that you're paying twice for it. That's my biggest issue, is that not only do you have to have PlayStation Plus to use PlayStation Now, but you have to pay a monthly fee for PlayStation Now as well. So you pay $9.99 for a month of PlayStation Plus and $14.99 for a month of PlayStation Now. So now I'm paying for what would basically be the equivalent of 3 months of PlayStation Live, PlayStation Plus, for 1 month of Plus and 1 month of streaming PS1, PS2, and PS3 games to my PS4. And while that's not terrible, I am more intrigued by the fact that PlayStation and Sony have dictated that the PS5, yes, it's actually being worked on because there's a new patent that just came out for backwards compatibility. So who's to say what anything is going to be? Because at this point, while everyone figured that with the advent of online gaming and downloading and streaming games was the future, we also thought 3D was going to be a big deal in the home, and look where that got us.
Well, let's be clear. When we say we don't mean we, because I never fucking thought 3D was going to be any goddamn thing.
It's a gimmick, and no one's ever going to care.
No.
However, let's be honest. While it is still in its infancy and is still kind of clunky, VR has its place now more than ever, and I can see it only growing and becoming more of a commonality in the gaming world, simply because of the fact that you have the ability to be able to stream the game directly with a headset versus a larger monitor. This is something that is good. This is something that is going to help make PC gaming in the general sense more accessible to people, especially with the advent of smaller console box-like PCs like the Steam box, or like Alienware makes one specifically like this. It's kind of like the Steam box, and it runs on either Steam OS or Windows, but can still also support virtual reality. So this is something that people are gearing up going into, knowing full well that this is not a gimmick. The problem with cloud gaming is that it's still technically a gimmick, because not everyone is willing to throw down for the physical library they still probably have for PS1 through PS3, and not being able to play that physical library without still owning those original consoles. It's just a pipe dream. It is, I mean, for fuck's sake, Sega tried it for a while, and we all saw how that worked out back in the days of frickin' 14.4K dial-up.
Sega Channel lives on.
It's not imperative that I spend my extra funds that I could be spending on another month PS Plus or another month of Xbox Live Gold or another month of an MMO that I'm playing or subbing to specific Twitch channels that I
Or
enjoy.
your subscription to Nintendo Online.
That's still a goddamn mistake. But anyway, the idea that you have to pay for a service that has basically almost always been free up to this point doesn't make any logical sense. Are people still going to do it? It's the only way you can play online, so yes. But does it mean that it's right? That's another topic for another time.
Mhm.
Honestly, cloud gaming to me, and I think to a large majority of people, I just don't think that it's a smart play. I think that having the ability to take your game where you want to go with it is good. And I think that's the way it should go. Not, here's our back library, play it on your console with as long as you have a 50 meg internet connection. Yeah, there's people in the boondocks who get a 2 meg connection who barely have, half a meg upload. They're not going to get that service.
No.
And that's still 20% of America's internet demographic. So
More than that.
at least 20%. At least
Oh, yeah.
20%.
Like, that's my biggest issue, is that people in cities are not necessarily going to go for that because they have, like, capped internet. There are a lot of, internet service providers.
Not just gap, but congested.
Yeah, capped and congested internet. And we still live in a society where you don't have a choice as to who your ISP is. Because ISPs, like fast ISPs at this point, are generally tied into your cable network. You can get some kind of a DSL line, but that's grossly expensive. And like companies like Verizon or other companies that offer Fios aren't necessarily an option for you, even if fiber optic has been run. Like in my area, for example, the state basically dicked Verizon in a bunch of areas out of being able to install it all because they didn't want to buy all of these specific licenses in bulk. So they said, well, you're not going to buy these licenses in bulk and never use them. Fuck you. You're not going to be able to install at all. And nobody's been able to unfuck it. So it's, in my area, you have the cable provider as your option, and that's it. And you're like, that's even in, decently settled, decently populous, decently well-designed internet-wise areas. I just don't have a choice. If my cable provider decided to throttle me, which thank God they don't, but if I was in an area where I had a throttled cable provider, I would be fucked. I couldn't get Dish because I live in an apartment. I wouldn't be able to get Fios because Verizon's not allowed to install in this area. It would be that provider or nothing. And this is in an area where these sorts of things are set up. If they capped me, this service would be useless to me. So then you talk about all of the people who maybe can't afford a higher speed, like they just go for the lowest possible speed that's available because it's what they can afford and they just need it. They consider it a necessity. It lets them play online, but for cloud streaming, it's probably not going to be sufficient for that kind of data requirement. It's going to be a miserable experience at best. So this is 20% of the country, I would say more than that, but is in a position where they just literally cannot participate because the internet design is terrible. Like, they have nothing available to them that would be worth a shit. But then you've got multiple areas on top of that where the expense is too great for somebody to get that sort of thing. The options that are available to people cap them, etc. This is the thing that is going to be available to maybe 15% of your user base, or 50% of your user base at best, I would say. Now, for Sony, this is a gamble that they can take because they have millions and millions and millions of people who own their console. For Microsoft, who, the last I checked, hadn't announced any additional sales numbers because they were too embarrassed about them, that's going to be a big investment that is probably going to be aimed again at their next generation platform, where they're kind of experimenting with it now and waiting to see if the next gen system can work with it. Sort of like how the Kinect came out for the 360, with their ultimate intention being to make it a big mandatory peripheral for the Xbox One. I see this being an experimental thing right now, and I don't see it being something that's being done to make money. Like, I think they expect that it's going to be a money loser.
I can see that.
So, I don't, like, I in general, the idea of cloud computing is whatever it is. If they have the ability, for example, to grab a game and put it onto a platform, for when I go offline, maybe. But if I'm constantly having to stream at all times and there's no local storage available, I don't see that being a service a lot of people are going to care about, especially if you're streaming some kind of a game that has a manual save process, because then on top of the possibility of losing power, you're also talking about the possibility of losing internet connectivity. And, oh, there goes 2 hours of my game down the toilet because I didn't remember to save. Yeah, fuck you. Not dealing with that. And frankly speaking, I don't see that being as profitable for Microsoft anyway, because they don't have as large of a library to draw from. Sony can go back, 3 console generations at this point, and 4 with the next platform, and start drawing stuff. Microsoft can only go back 2 console generations, and most people don't give a fuck about the Xbox. So you're kind of in a position where they're basically marketing this service off of the strength of the Xbox 360 library. And
it's not a bad library, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, like that's fine, I guess, but I don't know that that's going to be enough for a lot of people either.
True. You're literally like banking on people having a strong nostalgia attachment to like Halo and Fable 2 or something.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure because I haven't looked, but I know for a fact you can play Halo already. Fable and Fable 2 are probably available to consumers in some capacity or another. Like, the only benefit that you get out of this is that you're not actually purchasing the digital game, so you're not, like, if the game goes off, you're not, like, if the game is removed or what have you, you're not losing anything because you never owned it to begin with. Like, otherwise it's just a digital rental service. And I feel
honest,
like
that is an entirely different conversation too.
Yeah,
because that right there is the core of the issues that a lot of people have with things like Origin, Uplay, Steam, Blizzard, all of these games. You may own the game, you may have paid for it, but in reality, if Steam ever went down and you just
paid for a license. You just paid for a license. That's it.
Yep. Unless that game is DRM free or doesn't have de novo associated with it, you've lost like 80 to 90% of your library. And that is an entirely different conversation. That, I mean, I'd love to have that talk too, because that's a big deal, but
maybe we could look into it for the next episode. But any final thoughts on Microsoft's attempt at cloud gaming before we call it a night? Or on Microsoft, since they were the big focus of the last half of this show?
They exist. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on cloud gaming in general, because I don't necessarily have an opinion on cloud everything in general. I feel like a lot of people are running to the cloud, and I don't necessarily begrudge them for it. There's definitely value in being able to stream stuff down to a platform from an endless array of storage media. I just feel like with all of the stuff that has not been fixed in America in specific and around the world in general, that this is not going to be a technology that gets to the level where it should be, where it needs to be, until like somebody gets off their ass and puts a shoe in the government's butt and says, do something. And yeah, that's just not going to happen with this administration.
Yeah. In regards to cloud gaming, I mean, the only experience I have is I actually did sign up, and I think I was part of a beta testing period for the OnLive service several years ago. I installed it on my PC, and I think I only had access to Sega Genesis titles. And from what I remember, the games were pretty laggy in terms of input. No different than playing, let's say, some fighting games like Soul Calibur 4 and 5 online ban, and some graphical like deterioration, pixelization, stuff like that. Just because, but this is also like something that was in its infancy. I would assume that even with the success that Sony is kind of having, I guess, with their PlayStation Now service, it's obviously have gone leaps and bounds, and Microsoft is feeling pretty confident in attempting to experiment with this, foregoing the virtual reality stuff by saying, we'll support Oculus Rift instead of, developing their own VR system, and then just going straight into this.
One.
They don't.
Yeah, they do. So Microsoft actually
is it the glass? Because that was something that they dropped a while ago, I thought.
They have, that was Google, and
Google Glass.
So no,
okay.
Yeah. Microsoft has the hologram.
Oh yeah, that one weird lens thing that looked like your.
Well, it is a visor.
It's now a visor,
and it's been a visor for like 5 years. They showed it off 2 E3s ago, but it now no longer is just a baseline hologram system, but it is a hologram with hologram projection. As long as you're wearing the augmented reality headset, it is still something that is in development and should be, as of right now, they're slating a 2020 release.
Because last time I heard that they were talking about it in terms of like they were showing off how it could work with gaming, like playing Minecraft in augmented reality holographic type of way.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep,
anyway.
It's still in develop. It's still considered in development with a release date of 2020, but we don't have any additional information beyond that.
I haven't heard anything about it in like 2 years, so.
Neither have I, and a lot of it is because at this point I don't know that they're going to continue the production on it because we've already got, at this point you've got 2. You've either got the Oculus Rift or you've got the HTC Vive. Those are the 2 that are the biggest ones, and Oculus is backed by Facebook and Vive is backed by Valve. So.
But yeah, so Microsoft is now attempting their hand at cloud gaming. Not exactly sure how well that'll land off, but like you were saying, Mark, obviously, end of Xbox One's life cycle is when they're going to probably issue it out like they did the Kinect, experiment, willing to lose money, and let's be honest, Microsoft has money to burn. So, and we'll see if it becomes a success in their eyes as in terms of like user feedback. That's probably how I think they'll judge whether or not they want to include cloud gaming service like this with their next Xbox platform, of course. But, I would have to say right here we should wrap things up. Just again, real quick, going around the room, just see what we got coming up. Jan, what do you have in terms of like streaming and all that fun stuff?
My standard schedule right now is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Usually around 7 to 7:30 Mountain. I'm not working on anything specific. I picked up a really cool 16-bit RPG called Crosscode. It plays kind of a lot like the old Secret of Mana style games, but it has more modern physics associated with it.
I have that in my wish list.
Yeah, the shot ricochet and stuff like that for the combat is actually really spot on. I enjoy it a lot. So I've been playing a little bit of that. I just started a first playthrough of Neo, and I'm also working on Mega Man.
Smeared all across the countryside.
Oh yeah, I did. I'm also working on a couple of other smaller titles like Mega Man and a couple of other things, but most of my time is going to be absolutely consumed once Soul Calibur 6 comes out in 9 days. So. That's what I have to look forward to.
And what do you have to look forward to, Mark?
Thinking about possibly streaming again, but I'm not committed to anything right now. I don't know when the next board game night is going to be, just because I haven't planned for it. My boss is supposed to be coming out sometime in the next week or so for just general stuff. So I'm probably just going to do a board game thing where I invite him over and we nerd out for a bit. Because he also likes board games. I am working on a video at the moment. Again, as I said, I'm not going to divulge the contents of it at this time. I'm going to, get it done and then release it as is and go from there. But yeah, that's pretty much about it for me.
All right, and as for me, Three Vets and a Noob is still on a hiatus, but me and some of the guys are still playing stuff. Right now, for the rest of the month, it's the Halloween event is going on Fantasy Star Online Blueburst with the Shatak server, and it's actually a lot of fun. They have some weird drop rates going on. They're currently at, I think, 3x rare drops and EXP boosts right now, so it's a lot of fun I'm having. I'm also, still playing Monster Hunter Online. I'm weaseling my way through Mega Man 11, and yeah, the inevitable Soul Calibur 6 is coming, so I'm probably going to lose myself in that game for a while. And, yeah, that's about it. I don't really have much. I haven't been streaming consistently outside of GVN Live, so it is what it is for me at this point. Once probably the holiday season begins, I can probably stream at a regular rate, like probably around end of November, beginning of December, when my buddy Rico comes back and Lance is available and my friend Matt is available, and we can, do our Wednesday and Thursday streams on a regular basis. But at this point, who knows? So anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight to GVN Live. Again, slow news week, so we just cherry-picked what we could and talked about it. And I think we did a pretty good job of extending those talks. So thank you guys for tuning in, and have a wonderful night.